after we got landed, somebody found some Japanese in caves. They survived by going down into caves, and the trees were knocked down by the Air Force and so forth. There was hardly any trees where we landed. But anyway, the Japanese were holed up in the cafe, so they moved what they call an alligator up, where he could, and had a big radio and a loudspeaker and a Japanese interpreter standing on this alligator, and he begged and pleaded and for the Japanese to come out, that they would be safe and protected by us if they would come out. But they would not move. They would not come out. He pleaded with them for a long time, and of course, being nosy, I stood there and watched all of this, and they wouldn't come out, so they brought a flamethrower up and threw the flames down and that was the end of the Japanese in the caves. And the next day, the paratroopers came over, and they jumped from an altitude of 300 feet. And some of them would lose their belongings, their duffel bags and so forth, and they'd hit the ground and pop. And some of them was hanging in the trees. Their parachutes would hang in some of the trees that did survive. And our troops went up and cut them down. And that's how we landed up by the airstrip that MacArthur wanted. And MacArthur knew, but we didn't know that they were sending the B-29s. That's when the B-29s came out from Boeing. Well, our troops went to work and laid metal caps on the runway. I forgot what you call them. They laid them on there for the B-29s. There was a metal that hooked together, and it covered so they weren't landing on dirt anymore. They were landing on these metal strips. Anyway, here come the B-29s, and they landed on a strip, and my job, I had a 60-foot boom on my shovel, and my job was to pick up 500-pound bombs and lay them on trailers, and they were rolled back under the wings of the B-29s and hooked to the wings and somewhere or other so they could release them. And then the next mornings, they'd take off, and I'd count the bombers going out and count them coming back. And I did that for a long time. That was my job, to just load those bombs. And the bombs, they had an eye in the end of them, and you pick them up by this eye, and then when they were put under the wing of the plane, well, this eye was unscrewed and a detonator screwed in the place of it.
Tell me about the Japanese prisoner of war camps in Manila.
I don't remember too much about it, but I remember going into the prisoner of war camp, and the soldiers were so weak they couldn't get up by themselves. They had to have help getting up. They were starved to death, and I remember walking on one side with another American soldier on the other side of him, and we walked him out, and he got in a vehicle, and was taken, I suppose, to a hospital or something. I don't know. That's about all I remember about. But that was in Manila.
Mm-hmm. When did you hear about the dropping of the atomic bombs, and what was your reaction?
Well, all I know is that I had been loading these 500-pound bombs on trailers, and then it was all over the news that we had a radio that we could get the news on, and you had to turn it to generate electricity so it had power to operate. And so we heard about dropping of this bomb, and it was a huge bomb that I'd never heard of it before, but they dropped it, and I think they dropped two of them, didn't they? And Hiroshima and was it
Nagasaki.
Nagasaki, and thousands of people killed, but it saved thousands of lives of the Japanese, and it put a stop to the war and saved a lot of Americans.
After the war was over, you went to Japan and you helped occupy Japan. What was your main job while there?
Our main job was just to make sure the Japanese behaved themselves and acted like human beings, which they hadn't been doing. And I stayed in the Mitsubishi airplane factory. It was a huge building where they built Mitsubishi airplanes. And we did use our equipment to build a baseball diamond or a softball, I don't know which. And then we maintained a few roads in Japan with our equipment.